Book of Heaven, Volume 13, Part 8. December 28th, 1921. Fears of not doing the divine will. Jesus gives her peace. Scourges. I was feeling very afflicted, and with such an oppression as to feel myself dying, because of certain things that it is not necessary to write here. Now my sweet Jesus, on coming, took me in his arms in order to sustain me and give me strength. And then all sweetness and goodness told me, "My daughter, what's wrong? What's wrong? You oppress yourself too much, and I do not want this." And I, "My Jesus, help me. Do not abandon me in so much bitterness." And what oppresses me the most is that I feel a volition arise in me that would want to say to you, "This time you shall do my will, not I yours." The mere thought of this gives me death. Oh, how true it is that your will is life. But the circumstances push me. Oh, please, help me. And I burst into tears. And Jesus, letting his hands be wet by my tears, and squeezing me more, added, "My daughter, courage. Do not fear. I am all for you. See how beautiful my hands are, pearled with the tears of the one who fears not doing my will. Not one of them fell to the ground. Now listen and calm yourself. I shall do what you want, but not because you want it, rather as if I myself wanted it. Aren't you happy? After all, a little suspension of your state is necessary. I have no one to whom to entrust you. Who could do it? They have hearts covered with an armor of iron. My voices are neither listened to nor understood. The sins are horrendous, the sacrileges enormous, and the scourges are already at the doors of the city. There shall be great mortality. Therefore, a little suspension of your state that prevents the course of my justice is needed. You shall give me free time to come, and I, withdrawing, without letting you go out of my will, shall give you what is necessary for you." I remained embittered more than ever, because of many other things that Jesus told me regarding our sad times, but calm, because he assured me that he would not let me go out of his will. But the following day my Queen Mamma came, and bringing little baby Jesus to me, she placed him in my arms and told me, "My daughter, hold him tightly. Do not let him go. If you knew what he wants to do. Pray him, pray him. Prayer in his will enraptures him, enchains him. Some of the scourges at least would be held back." Having said this, she disappeared, and I returned to the tragic doubt that I had induced Jesus to do my will. January 3rd, 1922. Relations that exist between the divine will and the human will. Continuing in my usual state, my always lovable Jesus, on coming, told me, "Daughter of my volition, come into my will that you may know the relations that exist between the divine will and the human will that the creature shattered, even from the terrestrial Eden. And the soul who knows no other life but the life of my will rebuilds it, binds it again, returning to it all the relations that the creature had broken, relations of creation, of origin of existence. These were bonds of union between creator and creature, relations of likeness, sanctity, science, power. Everything I contain, I placed in relationship with man, relations in the order of all created things, and to him I gave primacy over everything. Now, by withdrawing from my will, man broke all these relations and placed himself in relationship with sin, with passions, with his fiercest enemy. Therefore the soul who lives in my will rises so high as to leave everyone behind. She places herself in order between me and her. She gives herself back to the origin and puts all broken relations in force. All created things form her cortege and recognize her as their legitimate sister, and they feel honored in letting themselves be dominated by her. The purpose for which they were created, to be commanded and to obey her slightest wishes, is now fulfilled. So all nature remains reverent around her and exults in seeing that finally its God receives the glory of the purpose for which he had created it, that of serving man. And so fire, light, water, cold, shall let themselves be commanded, and shall faithfully obey. And just as my love immediately prepared the remedy to save man, descending from heaven by becoming man, so this soul who lives in my will, by giving herself back to the beginning, to her eternal origin from which she came, even before my humanity was formed, already kissed and adored my blood, my wounds. She honored my steps, my works, and formed a worthy cortege to my humanity. O soul who lives in my will, you alone are the purpose of the glory of creation, the decorum, the honor of my works, and the fulfillment of my redemption. In you, I centralize everything. May all relations be given back to you. And if you, out of weakness, should fail, I, for the decorum and honor of my will, shall make up for you in everything. Therefore be attentive, and give this highest contentment to your Jesus. January 5th, 1922. The divine being is led by an irresistible force to communicate itself to the creature. I was feeling very embittered, and my sweet Jesus, on coming, clasping me all to himself, told me, "My daughter, your affliction weighs upon my heart, more than if it were my own. I cannot bear that you be so embittered, and at any cost I want to see you happy. I want to see the smile that the beatitude of my will brings arise on your lips again. Tell me then, what do you want, so that I may render you happy again? Is it possible that after so much time, in which you have denied me nothing, I should not give you what you want and make you content? And I, my love, what I want is that you give me the grace to always, always do your will. This is enough for me. How much I fear that I might not do this. Is this not the greatest misfortune, not doing your will, even in the littlest thing? Yet your proposals, your very attentions, induce me to this, because I see that you want to do my will, not because this is your will, but because you want to make me happy and empty my heart of the bitterness with which it is as though soaked. Oh, Jesus, Jesus, do not permit this. If you want to make me happy, your power does not lack other means to take me away from my affliction. And Jesus: my daughter, daughter of my will, no, do not fear. It shall never be that our wills be even just injured. If a miracle is necessary, I shall do it, but our wills shall never separate. Therefore calm yourself in this regard, and be cheered. Listen, my being is led by an irresistible force to communicate itself to the creature. I have yet many more things to tell you, many more truths that you do not know. And all my truths carry the happiness that each of them possesses, and as many truths as the soul knows, so many different happinesses does she acquire. Now, in finding your heart embittered, they feel their happiness being shaded, and they cannot communicate themselves freely. I am like a happy father who possesses the fullness of the whole of happiness and wants to make all his children happy. Now, if he sees one of his children who really loves him, and he sees him melancholic, pensive, at any cost he wants to render his child happy and to free him from that disquiet. And if he knows that melancholy is because of the love that the child has for him, oh, then he gives himself no peace. He uses all his arts and makes any sacrifice to render his child happy. So I am, and since I know that your affliction is because of me, if I do not see you come back again to your state of gladness, and marked by my own happiness, I shall render myself unhappy, waiting for you to return into the arms of my happiness. January 11th, 1922. The souls who live in the divine will shall be for the mystical body of the Church like skin to the body, and shall bring to all of its members the circulation of life. Finding myself in my usual state, I was thinking about the holy divine volition, and I said to myself, all the children of the Church are members of the mystical body, of which Jesus is the head. What shall be the place that the souls who do the will of God shall occupy in this mystical body? And Jesus, always benign on coming, told me, my daughter, the Church is my mystical body, of which I glory in being the head. But in order to be able to enter this mystical body, the members must grow to the proper stature, otherwise they would deform my body. But alas, how many not only do not have the due proportion, but are rotten, wounded. So much is to be disgusting to my head, and to the other healthy members. Now the souls who live in my will, or shall live, shall be for the body of my Church like skin to the body. The body contains internal skin and external skin, and because in the skin there is the blood circulation that gives life to the whole body, it is by virtue of this circulation that the members reach the proper stature. If it wasn't for the skin and for the blood circulation, the human body would be horrid to the sight, and the members would not grow to due proportion. Now, see how these souls who live in my will are necessary to me. Since I have destined them to be like skin to the body of my Church, and like circulation of life for all the members, they shall be the ones who shall give the proper growth to the ungrown members, who shall heal the wounded members, and who, by the continuous living in my will, shall restore the freshness, the beauty, the splendor of the whole mystical body rendering it fully similar to my head, that shall sit with all majesty upon all these members. This is why the end of days cannot come if I do not have these souls who live as though dissolved in my will. They interest me more than anything. What impression would this mystical body make in the celestial Jerusalem without them? And if this interests me more than anything, it must interest you also more than anything, if you love me. And I, from now on, shall give to all your acts done in my will the virtue of circulation of life for the whole mystical body of the Church. Like blood circulation for the human body, your acts, extended within the immensity of my will, shall extend over all, and like skin, shall cover these members, giving them proper growth. Therefore be attentive and faithful. Then afterwards I was praying, all abandoned in the will of Jesus, and almost without thinking I said, "My love, everything in your will, my little pains, my prayers, my heartbeat, my breath, all that I am and can, united to all that you are, to give proper growth to the members of the mystical body." In hearing me, Jesus made himself seen again, and smiling with satisfaction, added, "How beautiful it is to see my truths in your heart as font of life, immediately having the development and the effect for which they have communicated themselves. Therefore correspond, and I shall make it an honor for myself that as soon as I see one truth developed, I shall make another font of truth arise." January 14th, 1922. The Most Holy Trinity, inaccessible light that gives life to all. I found myself outside of myself, and I saw the heavens opened, and a light inaccessible to any creature. Rays descended from within this light that invested all creatures, celestial, terrestrial, and purging. Some rays were so dazzling that though they remain invested, enraptured, delighted, one would not know how to repeat anything of what they contained. Other rays were less dazzling, and one would be able to repeat the beauty, the happiness, the truths that they contained. But the power of the light was so great that I myself didn't know whether my little mind would ever be capable of going back into myself again. If my Jesus had not stirred me with his words, no human force could have pulled me back from that light to call me back to life. But alas, I am not yet worthy of my dear and celestial fatherland. My unworthiness forces me to wander in exile. But oh, how hard this is for me. Then Jesus told me, "My daughter, let us go back together into your bed. What you see is the most holy Trinity that holds all creatures as though in the palm of its hand, and as though from its mere breath it gives life, it preserves, it purges and delights. There is no creature that does not hang upon it. Its light is inaccessible to created mind. If anyone wanted to enter, it would happen to him as to a person who would want to enter into a great fire. Not having sufficient heat and power to withstand this fire, he would be consumed by the fire. Therefore, being extinguished, he would never be able to tell either how much or what kind of heat that fire contained. The rays are the divine virtues. Some virtues are less adaptable to created mind. This is why the created mind is delighted. It sees them, but is unable to repeat anything. The other virtues that are more adaptable to the human mind can be described, but like a stammerer would, because no one can speak about them in a way that is right and worthy. The virtues that are more adaptable to the human mind are love, mercy, goodness, beauty, justice, science. Therefore, together with me, let us send our homages in the name of all, to thank it, praise it, and bless it for so much goodness toward all creatures. Then, after having prayed together with Jesus, I came back into myself. January 17th, 1922. Each good that the creature does is a sip of life that she gives to her soul. I was following the passion of my sweet Jesus. In one instant I found myself outside of myself, and I saw my always lovable Jesus being dragged along the streets, trampled, beaten, more than in the very passion, treated in such a barbaric way as to be repugnant to the sight. I drew near my sweet Jesus to snatch him from under the feet of those enemies who looked like many incarnate demons. He threw himself into my arms as if he were waiting for me to defend him, and I brought him into my bed. Then, after quite a few minutes of silence, as though wanting to rest, he said to me, "My daughter, have you seen how vice, passions, triumph in these sad times? How victoriously they walk along all the streets, while good is trampled, beaten, and annihilated. Good is I. There is no good that the creature might do in which I am not involved. And each good that the creature does is a sip of life that she gives to her soul. So the more good acts the creature does, the more the life of her soul grows, rendering her stronger and more disposed to do more good acts. However, in order to be exempt from any poisonous substance, these acts must be upright, without human purpose, only to please me. Otherwise, the most beautiful acts, the holiest in appearance, who knows how much poison they contain? And I, being pure good, shun these contaminated acts, and I do not communicate the life. So even though it seems that they do good, their good is empty of life, and they feed themselves with foods that give them death. Evil strips the soul of the garment of grace. It deforms her. It forces her to swallow poison, to make her die immediately. Poor creatures, made for life, for happiness, for beauty. And sin does nothing other than give her sips of death, sips of unhappiness, sips of ugliness, that taking all vital humors away from her, render her as dry wood, to burn with greater intensity in hell. January 20th, 1922. What the soul who lives in the divine will must do with her rags. I was all worried, with the addition that I saw myself as so bad that only Jesus can know the miserable state of my soul. And my sweet Jesus, all goodness told me. My daughter, why do you oppress yourself? In my will, do you know how one's own things are? They are like many miserable rags, tatters that give more dishonor than honor to the soul, and cause her to remember that she used to be a poor one, and that she did not possess a single garment that was whole. When I want to call a soul into my will, so that she may establish her dwelling in it, I act like a great lord who would want to take one of the poorest women into his palace, so that, laying down the clothing of a poor one, she may clothe herself according to his condition, living life together with him, and sharing in all his goods. Now, this lord makes his round around all the streets of the city, and there, where he finds one of the poorest women, without a roof, without a bed, with only the filthy rags that cover her, he takes her and brings her to his palace as triumph of his charity. However, he orders that she lay down her rags, that she clean herself, and clothe herself with the most beautiful garments, and so as to keep no memory of her poverty, she burns her rags. In fact, since he is immensely rich, he does not admit anything into his house that might give of poverty. Now, if the poor one sadly misses her rags, and afflicts herself because she has brought nothing of her own, would she not offend the goodness, the magnanimity of that lord? So I am, and if that lord made his round around one city, I make my round around the whole world, and maybe all generations. And there, where I find the littlest, the poorest one, I take her and place her in the eternal sphere of my volition, and I say to her, work together with me in my will. What is mine is yours. If you have something of your own, lay it down, because in the sanctity and immense riches of my will, they are nothing but miserable rags. Wanting to have one's own merits is of servants, of slaves, not of sons and daughters. What belongs to the father belongs to the children. And besides, what are all the merits that you could acquire compared to one single act of my will? All merits have their own little value, weight, and measure. But who could ever measure one single act of my will? No one. No one. And then what are your merits compared to mine? In my will you shall find them all, and I make you the owner. Aren't you happy? Listen, my daughter, I want you to leave everything aside. Your mission is immense, and more than words. It is the acts that I expect from you. I want you to be in continuous act in my will. I want the strolling of your thoughts in my will, that strolling over all human intelligences may lay the mantle of my will over all created minds, and rising up to the throne of the Eternal One, you may offer all human thoughts, sealed with the honor and the glory of my divine will. Then lay the mantle of my will over all human gazes, over all words, placing your eyes and your words over all of their own, as though strolling, and sealing them with my will, may you rise before the Supreme Majesty once again, and offer the homage, as if all had made use of the sight and the speech, according to my will. In the same way, if you work, if you breathe, if your heart palpitates, may your strolling be continuous. Your way is extremely long. It is the whole of eternity that you must cover. If you knew how much you lose with one stop of yours, and how you deprive me, not of a human honor, but of a divine honor. These are the merits that you should fear losing, not your rags and your miseries. Therefore, more attention in doing your races in my will. You have reached the end of the Book of Heaven, Volume 13, Part 8. Fiat.